Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here, well, it's late afternoon now, and I'm going to be making an episode of What's New. So I hadn't made a choice when I did this week, earlier in the week, because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And then I decided on this album. And I decided that live album can go in here, even though I already did a live album today. I decided that this one had to be done. It's a new album, of course, because it's what's new. This is Steve Hackett's Live Magical at Trading Boundaries. So I wasn't really quite sure what to expect, because Steve Howe can be very heavy at times, or very acoustic. This was much more acoustic. In fact, there was no drums on the album at all, I don't believe. I don't even think there was any bass on this album either. So anyways, released January the 17th, 2025, so a couple weeks ago. 58 minutes in length. That's pretty standard for a live album. I tend to be a little more forgiving for live albums when they're longer than I am for studio albums. I guess my attention span for studio albums is usually between about 35 and 45, although it's gone up a little bit because a lot of the more modern albums are longer. My attention for live albums tends to be longer, because I expect it's like going to a concert, right? This is on Inside Out Music, or Sony if you prefer. Appearing Steve Hackett on guitars. Sorry, I got this in the wrong spot, so just give me a second here. Okay, so Steve Hackett on guitars, Roger King on keyboards, and Rob Townsend on sax and flute. Also some flute here from John Hackett, and Amanda Lehman on guitar and vocals as well. So the overall view of the album, it's very classical in nature, very folky, acoustic, quiet, pastoral in a lot of ways. A lot of progressive stuff here, but mostly a folky, classical album. Not much in the way of vocals. There's, I think, maybe 2 or possibly 3 tracks with some vocals on them. Everything else is instrumental, primarily dominated by classical guitar. Some beautiful stuff here. A lot of stuff on this live album that you will recognize from some of his past albums, some of his Genesis stuff as well. So I think there's 19 tracks in total on the album. Just go over them. It's not going to be a great detail on any of them. Most of them are fairly straightforward. So you have an improv right at the beginning. It's a classical guitar bit. Clearly a top shelf, really good instrumental. Then you have Blood on the Rooftops, which is just the excerpt from it, not the whole song, just the excerpt. Another classical bit from Genesis, Wind and Wuthering. Really great classical part. I really like this version a lot. Next up is Barren Land. This is a more subdued classical bit, but still a classical bit. It's clear, it's excellent, it's Steve Hackett at his best, right? Next up is Blacklight. This may be the weakest of the tracks early on, but still a good track. I gave it a 6.5. A more filling classical bit, not as much picking parts. I think a little bit more strumming part, I guess, maybe might be what you want to call it. Sorry, tongue-tied there for a second. Then we have Horizons, which, of course, everybody knows is the opening classical bit to Supper's Ready from Genesis, Foxtrot album. Yeah, just really good. One of my favorite classical bits by Steve Hackett. and I'm glad he got to play it here. I really enjoyed it. Jacuzzi is the next track. It's actually, at this point, is probably my favorite track, Horizons. I didn't mention that. So next up is Jacuzzi. Some very whimsical keyboard parts here. Classical sound. The flute is a standout. He has quite a lot of a classical bit with a bit of a flamingo sound towards the end of the song. Supper's Ready excerpt. Acoustic guitar, flute, and very clear sounding. So it's just a tiny excerpt from the Supper's Ready, the song. Then you have After the Ordeal. Very good, excellent bits on this as well. So now we go to the back half here. The Hairless Heart. So the next 4 tracks, The Hairless Heart, The Jazz of Summer's Night, Gnozine number 1, and Walking Away from Rainbows. And you could probably throw in Paul du Organ Concerto. The Dual du Organ Concerto, sorry. All 5 of these tracks aren't as good as the beginning of the album. Maybe a little bit down. I wasn't as up for these tracks. So The Hairless Heart, some piano, it's just some great piano on it, and some great acoustic and classical guitar parts here too. Jazz on the Summer's Night, and this is a more operatic feel with some excellent flute on it. And I'm not even sure how you pronounce this. Is this Gnozine number 1 or Gnozine number 1? I never know if the G's are silent in these type of things. It's a constant beat with a flute. Kind of a flute part that I like quite a bit as well. Walking Away from Rainbows. This is a synthesizer background with an acoustic guitar sound and a little bit of sax in there as well. Now this one, I think maybe I might have been answering the phone when this one came, because I don't even know what I wrote. Paul du Organ Concerto. This has got the very heavy church organ part, very dominated on this particular track. Next up is The Red Flowers of Tai Chi Blooms. Blooms Everywhere, sorry. It's kind of catchy, somber, got a bit of an oriental sound to it, which would be to expect with the word Tai Chi in there. Hands of the Priestess. This is a song very familiar to me. Probably the best track on this whole album, I think. It's a classical bit with an epic flute and acoustic classical guitar bit. It's a very endearing track, really good. I really like it. Memory Lane, a bit of a sad song. This is the first one on the album with some vocals on it, the female vocals. Very strong, very clear. It's a bit of a folky track with a symphonic sound and some sax towards the middle to end of the album. Next up is Only Happy When It Rains. This is the only track with harmonica. I'm not sure who's playing the harmonica. They don't give any credits for that. But there's a strong harmonica part with an acoustic guitar. It's going to be a bit of a sad female vocal part to it as well. Ace of Wands, of course, we know all off of Voyage of the Acolyte. There's a very heavy flute, very Irish feel to this song. Yeah, it's just a great track, one of his best tracks, I think. And The Journey, which ends the album. It's a quiet symphonic sound with a classical guitar bit. So, as you can see, pretty much dominated by the classical guitar bits. Quite a few songs with quite a bit of flute on them. I tend to like classical guitar and flute mixed together quite a bit. Any albums with that kind of a combination, really intriguing. There is quite a bit of that on some of his original, like on his first album, Voyage of the Acolyte, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. There's some of this also on some of the Genesis stuff too. Trick of the Tail, Wind and the Wuthering, being Wind and Wuthering. Sorry, I always want to put the word "the" in there. I'm not sure why. After a while, you know when you get in your mind that something's called something, and then it just sticks there, and nobody challenges you. You don't even think about it, right? You just keep calling it that, not even though you can clearly see that it doesn't say that, right? Anyways, a great track. A great album, I think. If you like that kind of classical, acoustic, almost pastoral, folky feel to the two albums, you'll like this a lot. I like it a lot. It's definitely one on my list to get. I will be going there in a couple weeks, and they probably will have it. They generally have anything by Steve Hackett, so hopefully I can get it. If not, I may have to order it. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of What's New, featuring Steve Hackett and his new live album, which I want to make sure I get the title straight here. Live Magic at the Trading Boundaries is the name of the album. Just came out January the 17th. So hopefully you get a chance to listen to it. Please hit the like and subscribe and notification bell above my head. And if you want to make any comments about the album, if you've actually had a chance to listen to it, you can put those in the comment section below. This will come out, of course, at 8 o'clock, as it always does, What's New. And we will see you next week with another episode of What's New. So take care and have yourself a good one. Goodbye.